that broadcast PC joined to the meeting. So it's on now, so we should be within moments.
Okay. And when I see YouTube get started, okay, channel 21 is up. Still waiting on YouTube. Is it YouTube okay now, Thomas? There it is.
Yeah. It should be here shortly.
Very good. All right. The time has arrived. Welcome, everybody, to the Federal Way City Council meeting, our regular meeting for April 20th, 2021. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Oh boy.
That's fun. Rough. Okay. All right.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Should we do a take two? No, just kidding.
Let's do it.
Great job, everybody. Okay. As I like to say all the time, the perfection is in the imperfection. So great job, everybody. Okay. You guys can you can take that quote if you like. Presentations, mayor's issues and report. We've got our COVID update, COVID-19 update. Ray Gross is not with us this evening. He's a little under the weather. We've got Bill Vadino, who will provide an update. And he is the policy advisor and for the city of Federal Way. The floor is yours, Bill.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Here we go.
Yes, we can.
Okay, Mayor, Council President, Council members. I monitored Patty Hayes' briefing today with the Sound Cities Association. And basically, we'll talk very quickly about 4 basic things today. Move back or not, vaccinations and access, J&J, and vaccination hesitancy. Sounds a little bit like Jeopardy, doesn't it? So, well, the next evaluation by the Department of Health is going to be released on Monday, May 3rd. The implementation on May 7th, as we know. At the last one, Pierce County and 2 other counties, Whitman and another one, moved back. And now there's a concern about Snohomish and other counties. Now, the way it works is in order to be moved back one phase, a county must fail 2 metrics. Number 1 is case counts above a certain level, and number 2 is hospitalizations. Now, under the previous plan, a county only needed to fail 1 metric to be to move back, and the governor revised those at the last minute. Otherwise, King County probably would have been back to phase 2. So for the large counties, so you have the definitions, those with more than 50,000 residents, they remain in phase 3, which is what we hope for if they keep a 14-day average of new COVID cases below 200 per 100,000 residents, and a 7-day average of new hospitalizations per 100,000 below 5. Now, right now, according to Dr. Hayes, King County's positive cases are up 18%. It's expected to go higher due to the spring breaks. There's an increase in the age ranges of 18 to 34 and 35 to 65. Southeast King County, we have a higher positivity rate of 6 to 7%, and the highest is 12.5% in Federal Way. There's no significant uptick in K-12. They're seeing a little uptick in child care, but it's still extremely low. Now, the good news for King County, even those tests, those positive tests are pretty much at that threshold, is hospitalizations are way down at 3.8, so well below the threshold. So we're crossing our fingers that we continue in phase 3 when we get to May. And then the deaths countywide are less than 2 deaths a day, still a tragedy, of course, but well below that threshold. So that's where we are. So basically the message to tell everybody who's watching this broadcast, tell your friends, mask up. And as the governor says, take it outside, and we'll hopefully stay at phase 3. Vaccinations, number 2. The good news is 54% of our King County citizens have received 1 dose of the vaccination, and 34% are fully vaccinated. And now as we move into the 16 and up, that gives us even more optimism. So we're working towards keeping away from those thresholds through that. Another piece is King County Public Health. Seattle King County Public Health is working with the pharmacies to make sure that they meet their numbers and to help them promote that they're available as well. In fact, that's how my 87-year-old mom finally got hers. If they need staffing, they find a way to help them out. They're helping with visibility. And Seattle King County Public Health is also doing that with all the community partners in the same manner to make sure people have enough vaccine, that people know that they are there, and that people take advantage of them. And she also announced that there's a program for vaccinating those who are homebound. I've got that link if you'd like it, or we can supply it later. Next subject, Johnson & Johnson. They've had minimum impact on our state and on our county, as at this point, there are only 4,000 doses earmarked for the county. And she wanted to reassure us it's a very rare disorder. Of course, if you've got it, it's a horrible thing. And right now, a lot of they call it abundance of caution, is to make sure that health providers across the country know how to identify it and figure out how to treat it in a priority fashion. So a lot of that caution is making sure that people who may have that rare situation are taken care of. The last big piece, and this is something that we've been discussing with the Federal Way Black Collective, it'll be discussed at tomorrow's meeting with them as well too, is what to do about vaccine hesitancy. And Seattle King County Public Health is working. They're going to provide cities like us information on how to get people to take the vaccine, because while each individual has to decide for themselves, CDC is sending out a lot of messaging that, the vaccines, the research is tight, there's scientific truth, it doesn't affect DNA, all the rumors are there to be dispelled. However, there is a legacy of misuse of the BIPOC community and others with experimentation over time. And some of you have seen the video of Marshawn Lynch and Dr. Fauci encouraging vaccination. Dr. Fauci respects and owns the history, and we need to work with people to let them know that this is the real deal and that we're here to help. And so public health is outreaching, as we will be too, working with community-based organizations to have a respectful conversation and have trusted community members, those who are trusted messengers, to reach out to with the message that the vaccine is there, it's to help, and it's not harmful. So that's her report. I haven't talked to the mayor about this, but I believe I'm going to start sending out those daily messages again, because our tests are elevating again. I think I just saw, I think we're up like 20 something this morning on positive tests. But keep in mind, it's about the positive tests and it's about the hospitalizations. And so if people mask up and stay outside and people are careful and people get vaccinated, we should be able to keep our businesses in phase 3. So let's all be vigilant. So any questions?
Council, any questions? Council President Honda.
There he goes.
I should be asking you the question, Vice Chair.
No. One of the things that I think is
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Now, can you hear me?
My headset, Council President. I'm sorry.
One of the things I think that's confusing to folks is, and this has, this happened during the first year of COVID, the mixed messages. So we were hearing, if you're vaccinated, you can be in a room with other vaccinated people or without a mask on. That was just a few weeks ago, maybe. There's just a lot of mixed messages. And I think overall the public is a little confused about what they can safely do and what they can't safely do. So we need to have one message that goes out, that the do's and the don'ts. Just my opinion. We have to quit confusing people.
Here. Agreed. Okay. Thank you very much. Next item on my report is opening day of the Federal Way Farmers Market is May 1st. Not this Saturday, but a week from this Saturday, May 1st, Saturday. Opens up at 10 a.m. Now, it's a little bit different location, and it's right behind the mall on 324th, though it's no longer going to be in the former Sears parking lot along Pacific Highway. It'll be in the same general parking lot, but it's going to be behind Dick's Sporting Goods. And so once again, that's going to be not this Saturday, but a week from this Saturday. We are putting VMS boards around in a couple of key locations. We got permission from the mall, and we'll put one on 320th as well. to make sure that we let people know of this most recent, where the farmers market is going to be. Also, we put it on our reader boards for the city official reader boards on 320th, right at the entry to the city, and on 348, the newer reader board. So I hope to see you there. They usually have great flowers there and all kinds of great goods and food, and hope everybody can make it. We've got the African American Black Community quarterly meeting. That's tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. It's via Zoom. I hope you can make that. We'll get some social media out about that. And that's always a great opportunity to talk with our neighbors about the direction we're heading. And clearly, today's verdict back in Minneapolis is a big step for this country. And clearly, it's something that really shook this not just this community, not just this region or this state, but our entire nation and frankly the world, and really brought a lot of attention onto police accountability and police and justice overall. So I just want to recognize that, and we're going to have a good discussion tomorrow night. So I hope you can make it. We've got the Business Resiliency Task Force meeting on April 22nd. That is Thursday at noon. And the following day, the Community Continuity Task Force on April 23rd. That's Friday, also at noon. And so, recall if you will, that when the pandemic first broke out, we wanted to make sure that we were gathering our business leaders together, as well as the individuals that make up key community stakeholders, whether it's our education institutions, for the Federal Way Public Schools, Highline College, UW-Tacoma, the hospitals, nonprofits. A lot of those organizations are in the Community Continuity Task Force, and our Business Resiliency Task Force obviously has the chamber represented, as well as a representative sample of businesses throughout the community. So that's going to be good as well. And I'd also like to take a quick thank you to Council President Honda, who has been working on the working group with the needle exchange, and I'm sure she'll address that during hers, but they had their first meeting last week, and look forward to hearing more about that. With that, let's move over to the financial update by Ade Erula.
Good afternoon, Mayor Farrell, Council President Honda. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, this is an update pretty much for the 2020 financial, how we ended up with what happened in 2020. And I think based on the activities and the action of both the mayor and the council, we made some changes in November, and that is part of what got us to where we ended up at the end of 2020. Our revenues were significantly reduced during the budget amendment of December 2020. So that reduction or that adjustment, I think, put us in a better position by the time we were done. I want to remind you also that because of the closure of Dumas Bay Community Center and Performing Arts Center, we ended up having to support those facilities with additional money from general fund. Some projects in 2020 and 2021 were not funded because we were expecting the revenue shortfall. So as you see how much money we have left, keep that in mind that yes, we did not fund some projects last year. Also, when we were putting 2021 and 2022 budget together, we were not able to fund some project because of that shortfall. The total general fund revenue was also affected by the CARE grant. So I think because of the creativity of the mayor and your directors with the CARE Act, we were able to do certain things, that you know uh, uh, made sure our employees are safe and the citizens are safe, but in the process help our budget also a little bit. So based on what you are going to see again, keep in mind the new grant that is coming. They are saying it will help with our revenue shortfall. How revenue shortfall will be defined as of now, that is not known. And what I'm speaking to regarding to that is, say, for example, you have a Prop 1, it's a restricted fund, and you have the general fund. So if we if it turns out that we've lost a lot of money in general fund, but we have a lot of money left in Prop 1, will they use it to balance each other, or will they give us the shortfall for general fund and discount the Prop 1? So again, it depends on how the federal government define the revenue shortfall. We may be able to do all right or not. Uh, Also, as you see the changes that I will show you, what will be available for appropriation, taking into consideration the items that were now funded in 2020 and 2021, and the changes that the council made, the changes, the new appropriation, we can only appropriate the difference between the fund balance. That is, what we thought we would start 2021 with and what we actually started 2021 with. That is the difference, and that is the amount that may be available for the appropriation. This is what general fund looks like. Look like at the end of 2020. If you see the sales tax, because of the retail entity in the city of Federal Way compared to a lot of other entities, we didn't depend on the mall. Walmart, Costco, Lowe's, Home Depot, those were the entities that people were shopping at, and those were the entity that we relied on at the beginning. So that made our sales tax compared to a lot of other entities made it look really good. But again, keep in mind, even though it shows we had a difference of 1.6, keep in mind we did reduce our revenue when we're doing budget amendment. So this is just the change from the amended budget to what we actually ended up with. Criminal justice sales tax, that is usually the money that is distributed by the King County, depends on what they distributed to us, because sales tax generally was hurting. That is why our sales tax revenue went down. But because of the mixture or the setup for City of Federal Way, where majority of our sales tax revenue is usually from those four businesses that I mentioned earlier, we did not see much revenue shortfall compared to the majority of the cities in the state of Washington. Our property tax remained relatively the same. Admission tax, that is the one of the funds that got the biggest hit. That is where you have the movie theaters were totally closed, performing arts center were totally closed, uh, Enchanted Village was totally closed. That is why we lost so much revenue in that area. Gambling, we lost a little bit, but evidently people were still able to do some of that. The state revenue, the state share revenue, we did better in that. State share revenue, that is pretty much to a great extent in lieu of property tax. So because the property tax didn't change as much, so that is a kind of what that one follows. Community development permit fees, that is another major decrease because, of course, residential construction was not really happening. People were not coming in for the new permit, And again, keep in mind, we did reduce that budget for the permit fees during the budget amendment. So despite that reduction, we still saw a major decrease in there. The same thing with franchise fee. We saw a major dip in there, and court fees because of the social distancing. I think we saw a little bit of that as well. And I think Judge Lassen has shared with the council in the past because of the court were not allowed to go after the indigent for some of the court charges if they are not able to pay. So for the past 3 years, that revenue has been declining. Park fees and miscellaneous revenue, that also took a big dip because community center was closed, our fields were closed, so there was no revenue in those areas. Even though, like community center, we still maintain the building where we're able to make sure that the properties are now vandalized. So, but we saw a major decline in revenue over there. Police overtime, this is where we bill third-party entities for the overtime. But because Enchanted Village was closed, the mall was closed, so the areas that used to use our police services were no longer in business. That is part of why the revenue in that area was down. And business license, that held its own. We did okay. Remember now, we changed to the state program just about a year ago, and that I think that is one of our good decisions that the council and the city have made, and that has actually is continuing to increase the revenue stream from that area. Other permits and miscellaneous, so we got a little bit increase in there. So this is where we show some of our grants. So I think that was a very big help. Remember, we amended again for general fund. We amended these in December, and that is what the revenue that actually helped the city a great deal. This is our spending. I think in addition to the city managing the revenue well, I think based on the instruction that the mayor passed on to the directors and the directors willing to do a lot of work and heavy lifting, and also people working from home, all of our spending were pretty much under budget. And just for the city clerk that show the only one above, that is because of the election cost. So it's not, which we often don't have control. The way I used to do the election cost allocation several years ago, the way we used to do it, which I assume that is what King County does too, you take the number of items on the ballot and you summarize all the total cost of election, and that is how you allocate your cost. So whichever entity has more items on the ballot, and of course, they get more costs, which they do not really have much control over other than not having item on the ballot. So the city council, the community development, courts, economic development, finance, pretty much all of us, pretty much underspend, and part of these for the police, that is also part of the jail cost, and also, we didn't have much overtime in police last year. So if you notice, the spending went down by almost 10.5%, where the revenue was only down by less than 2%. The analysis of a major revenue, sales tax did better due to the affected businesses, as I pointed out, because of Costco, Lowe's, Home Depot, and Walmart that were doing really, really well, even based on the presentation that was made earlier at the previous presentation during the work session. Those entities were doing really well. So I think that is what affected our sales tax. Building permit revenue was shy of the reduced budget, but again, like I mentioned earlier, we reduced the budget. Utility tax and Prop 1 were due to the unrecognized prior year revenue. In 2020, that is when we got all of the money for 2019, 2018, and 2020. So that is part of why that looked really, really good. I think that is a 1 year shot. So from now on, you're going to see the revenue, the total revenue in utility tax and Prop 1 annually will be lower than 2020 because we will only be dealing with 1 year revenue from now on. Traffic safety revenue was shy of the reduced budget. Again, if you notice, even though we have I've tried to put 2019 so that you're able to compare what we did before the COVID-19 and what the original budget was and what we amended the budget to be and what we actually did. So if you see traffic light in 2019 we did 3.8 and the original budget 3.58 and the original budget in 2020 was 3.8. We reduced it down to 2.87 and we ended up with 2.16. The catch with traffic safety light is because we pay some employees out of there. So even when that goes down, the general fund will have to come up with the difference. And we pay for mostly the patrol officers, mostly, some of the employees that work on traffic in public works. So, I think that was one of my major concern last year, if you remember. But I think, we did just a little bit below what the amended budget was. Another fund that got a big hit was Hotel Motel. In 2019, we did almost about zero point 0.3 million, just about 300,000. We budgeted 300,000 for the budget. We kept the budget just to see what it would do. But when the dust settled, we only came up with almost about 130,000 instead of 300,000. REIT did very well. I think at the last quarter of 2020, we saw some major transaction and some major big apartment complexes that changed hands. So I think based on what some of the financial analysts are saying, and I think some of us can actually see that from the distance, Seattle, King County is hot in terms of real estate. It's hot. Actually, there's a report that says you actually have corporations buying residential properties for investment. So it's not just people moving in trying to get a house to live. You have companies buying residential properties just for investment. That is part of what is making King County area real estate very, very, very hot. So Prop 1, as I mentioned earlier, I think we did a little bit better even than the budget that was amended higher last year. Now, this is the real meat to the potato because this is the fund, as I said earlier, the money that we can actually really allocate when we're talking about the budget amendment. General fund amount will be about 2.36 million, as I mentioned earlier, due mostly to the sales tax. Traffic safety light, REIT, Prop 1, keep in mind, even though they may look good, but remember, they can only be spent for specific items. So if we're short in general fund, I cannot transfer money from those entities to general fund, even though I can transfer money from general fund to those restricted funds. So as you see, say, well, yep, you're coming up with almost $1 million in traffic light. Oh, you're coming up with almost $1 million in REIT. Oh, you're coming up with about more than 300,000 in Prop 1. All of those are restricted. So I cannot use them for the items in general fund. But when we bring the budget amendment back to the council, these are the items that we will try to allocate or reappropriate. So we will be presenting budget amendments shortly. There will be more requests than available funds. That is usually the story. Some of our potential requests in general fund will be, security for the shop. I think the building has been broken into so many times in the last year. Cleaning for the city hall upon opening. As we prepare to bring our staff back to the city hall, I think we need to make adequate plan to make sure we're able to keep the place clean and keep our employees safe. 2022 funding for new positions. If you remember when the council was discussing the 2021-2022 budget last year, you created some new positions, but you funded those positions just in 2021. Unfortunately, these are not temporary employees, so that means we have to fund them for 2022 if you want to keep them. Example of those is you funded economic development staff, the inclusion staff, the IT administrative assistant staff. So those employees, we have to make provision for them for 2022. Also, we need to pay the salary study that was done last year. There's a little bit of money that we end up having to pay this year, when they submitted their final report. So that would be just about 9,000. Then 2022 COLA for unrepresented employees. So we had lengthy discussion, or the council had lengthy discussion about that last year. So I think that is probably another place to revisit. Vehicle replacement. Now and then, as the year goes by, there are some of our vehicles that are old. We replace them, and the fund for most of this vehicle replacement are already created in their fund. So this would not necessarily affect the general fund, but these will affect the funding for the new position, the cleaning, the security for the shop. Those will affect the general fund allocation. That's the end of my
Very great.
presentation.
Council, any questions? Thank you, Uday. Council, any questions? Okay, thank you. There'll be more to come, but we do have a sort of a melancholy announcement to make, and that is that our longstanding, for 7 years now, our finance director, after over 30 years of service throughout the state and 7 years with us, is retiring this year. And his last day will be the end of July, and officially his last day would be in October, but he's going to utilize some vacation. So, but end of July. So, Uday, thank you so much for 7 years of service to this community. We so much appreciate, all of your efforts. And would you like to say a few words about that?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, the pleasure is all mine. I think I'm very blessed, and I'm very thankful for the ability to work with you. I've enjoyed a great deal of support from you and the council. I think I'm glad that I'm putting my 35 years of government accounting service, putting that to bed with the City of Federal Way. It has been a great crew. I've enjoyed working with all of my colleagues, and I think we have a great crew here in the City of Federal Way. The employees are great. So thank you. And it has been a great pleasure, serving the residents of Federal Way. Thank you.
Thank you. This community is in your debt, as am I. Thank you so much. We call him the professor, and we will miss him so. So we will we'll go through a process. I'll announce that more, and we'll go through all that. But we've got him for the next couple of months, and we're going to squeeze every last bit of knowledge out of him in that time. So thank you very much, Uday.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, now we move on to council committee reports. First, we've got the Parks, Recreation, Human Services, and Public Safety Committee, and that is Councilmember Kochmar.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Best wishes a day to your new phase of your life in retirement. You'll enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, thank you. So we had our last Parks meeting on April the 13th, and most of the items on that Parks agenda are now on your consent agenda. Everything from D through I on the consent agenda, which includes the Arts Commission's contract for services, the Human Services Commission work plan for the next 2 years, an agreement with Public Health for South King County Mobile Medical Program, which is not the needle exchange, it's dental work. Okay, and then we're going to get we're accepting a Justice Assistant grant for fiscal year 2020. And we have an agreement between the Washington Traffic Safety Commission and the Federal Police Department to provide grant funding for traffic enforcement. And finally, we're going to approve a Lake Haven Utility District water main easement over by Lakota Park. And so that's my report for Parks. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right, Land Use and Transportation Committee, Councilmember Baruso.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ade, I hope you stick around because I'm sure I'll have some comments for you later on. So please stick around. We did have our meeting April 5th, and we had 2 items. We potentially have 2 items on consent agenda. They both B and C. Our next meeting is May 3rd at 5 o'clock, and it will probably be Zoom still. That's been my report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Finance, Economic Development, Regional Affairs Committee, that is Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our meeting is going to be next Tuesday, April 27th at 5 p.m. on Zoom. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, Councilmember Asafa Dawson.
Thank you, Mayor. And as we all know, with the lodging tax, there's a lot of tourism-related stuff that we work on, and a lot of the the committee members are hotel managers in our city. And so just wanted to run a few data numbers for you. And so in 2019, the nation's nearly 56,000 hotels experienced an average annual hotel occupancy of 66%. Federal exceeded the national trends in excess of 75%. And however, with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, it brought hotel occupancy nationally 44% for the year, even with the historic low of 24.5% in April of 2020. And so Federal Way also was similar in numbers to those. Now, hotel occupancy for 2021 is expected to average 52.5%, an increase of only 8.5% points from 2020. So it appears that occupancy rates are projected to rebound more significantly in 2022, reaching 61.4%. So staff is working with LTAC to formulate a plan to bring back the tourists quickly. And so meanwhile, we'll look forward to Wild Waves opening in June. It appears our Parks Department is seeing a return, albeit small return, to softball tournaments under COVID protocol. And our next LTAC meeting will be Wednesday, May 12th at 10 a.m. Thank you so much.
And then come back. All right. Thank you very much, Councilmember Savadasan. All right. On regional affairs, regional committee report with Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. It was quite a bit of a hefty meeting over at the Sound Cities Association, but specifically the Public Issues Committee. It's where all elected officials regionally come together and talk about policies that relate from the state and to the county. And we got a legislative update. We are at the tail end of the legislature's session, whatever you want to call it. And so you'll see an update on their agenda, which I think all of you guys get, if I'm not mistaken. In addition, there was a discussion on the King County rates and fees, and Sound Cities Association's take on it is that they urge King County and other entities to forego any increase on rates and fees until all options have been explored and exhausted. And that's obviously in light of COVID-19. The mayor is probably aware of that as he sits on the board for Sound Cities Association, and this is for solid waste rates, and fees, along with sewer rates for the county, to be specific, and also discussed at the regional level was fireworks. It's a favorite topic amongst all Americans. And if you thought that you can live in unincorporated King County and have fireworks, well, that could be changed. And so the county is considering legislation that would prohibit the sale and the use of all forms of fireworks in unincorporated King County. And so violations could be of up to $250 and whatnot. So the proposed ordinance was voted out of county council committee on the 17th, one day before my 37th birthday, and one day after my son was born. And so that's a little bit about that. And obviously that will not impact city boundaries. That will not change our perspective. This is just in unincorporated areas of the county. Furthermore, Best Starts for Kids levy that is slated to be on our ballots. It was also discussed. And with that, it would be my update for the city council here and the public. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Council President Honda.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of our citizens who wrote, called, emailed Sound Transit with their opinions about the draft EIS for the OMF South. I know we've been asking for citizen input now for a long time, and this last week I heard from many citizens who got the message and who sent in their thoughts that this belongs at the Midway landfill and not here in Federal Way. So I'd really like to thank all of our citizens who participated in that. That was very, very important. One of the big issues facing our city. I think the council is probably hearing from some of our citizens about what the city council in Auburn did recently, potentially fining homeless people who do not take the services that are offered to them. So I had the opportunity to watch their May 12th study session. It's a 3-hour meeting, but a lot of that meeting is devoted to this topic. And if you want to get some really good information about why they went that way, because I know that some of our citizens are asking us to do the same thing, you might want to watch it. It's very interesting, and I don't have an opinion about that, but I think that you could learn their issues, because some of their issues are certainly our issues with our homeless population. And last Wednesday, we had the first meeting of the Needle Exchange Working Group. The mayor spoke, the city attorney spoke, and the members introduced themselves and talked about their concerns. And then we had 2 experts from Public Health and the University of Washington answer questions and talk about the program. So we will be having our second meeting on Thursday at 7 o'clock, and tomorrow the mayor, Bill Vedino, and I will be meeting to discuss if we'll open the meetings to the public, which is something that has been recommended, and Public Health supports opening the meetings to the public, because the Public Health, Dr. Hayes does agree that the more information that we can get to the public, the better. And the way we could do that is by opening the meetings to the public. So, and getting all of the information from the first meeting out to the public also. But I was wondering, Mayor, if it's possible for the city attorney, and I should have talked to you about this ahead of time. I did not. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Could talk about the legal issues surrounding this so that more of our public could understand where that is and what the legal issues are concerning the needle exchange program.
You bet. Absolutely.
And thank you.
Would you like me to do that right now?
Yeah, that's the end of what that's the end of what I had to say.
Okay. Well, first of all, Council President, thank you so much for your leadership on this issue and for your help on this issue, chairing the committee. Very much appreciated. So, Ryan, are you on the call?
Yes.
I do want to say that when we, I'm going to turn this over to Ryan in just a moment, but when we first were encountering this issue with regard to the needle issue, part of the situation was we were really having a difficult time trying to figure out what exactly was going on in our city and whether they were going to the grocery store locations, whether which King County, Seattle King County Public Health adamantly insists that they were not going to the Rite Aid parking lot adjacent on 320th, adjacent to the Safeway. They're saying that was not them. And we really didn't have, there wasn't a great deal of understanding on our part about exactly what was going on. As you can imagine, and so every time we communicated with Seattle King County Public Health about these so-called sightings at the grocery store locations, another was at the U.S. Bank location a little bit further north on Pacific Highway. Once again, we were told that was not them. And so there are other groups out in King County that are distributing needles. So that was part of it. And then we had a citizen, go to a local park and ride and without exchanging needles, obtained, a box of 100 or a box or a bag of 100 needles without any kind of exchange and without any sort of, it was reported without any kind of referrals. So I say all that because that gives context when this erupted on social media. One of the things I said I was going to do and that I did is reach out to the public health director, Patty Hayes, who we have a great relationship here at the city. In fact, her first week 7 years ago, back in, I believe it was the summer, I think it was back in July or August of 2014. Her first week was the week that we came up unanimously, and my recommendation, where the council came up with $230,000 to save our public health facility here in Federal Way on 13th place up at 336th. So we've had a great relationship with Patty and with Director Hayes. We heard her today on her update. And so when this all came up, we asked her to suspend, and there's been a lot of discussion out in the community about why just suspend. And that, number one, was to get our arms around exactly what is going on and what the metrics are, what the goals are, and to have a community conversation about this program, what our expectations are as a community and as a city government, because we didn't receive any notice about what they were doing. So not to retread all this, but I do want to give that context. So that being said, the reason, I do want to give great credit to Director Hayes, because my request was to suspend. There is a state Supreme Court decision where, as you can imagine, these type of needle exchange programs have been very controversial. And I believe it's State versus Brockett, which is a state Supreme Court decision that says that counties cannot prohibit the needle exchange programs if they're truly based on the prevention of disease, and as this program is rooted in. But that's why and I'm going to turn this over to you, Ryan. I know I'm kind of stealing your thunder here, but the key issue was we wanted to make sure that we suspend this. She's agreed to suspend the program here in Federal Way for the next several months, perhaps not as long as 3 months, but again, to let everybody know who's watching this who may not have seen the last meeting, this council has agreed with our resolution to bring a report back from Council President Honda's committee in the first meeting in June. With that being said, Ryan, could you please just explore, just very superficially, the state, just very briefly, the State versus Brockett ruling and rationale.
Sure. So the fundamental question was, I mean, people were contesting the ability of the Board of Health to basically pass out drug paraphernalia when there's a criminal statute that prevents you or I from doing that. And the Supreme Court, in their ruling, cited the statute that authorizes the Board of Health. It's important, just backing up, to keep in mind, we often say the county or refer to this entity as the Board of Health, but it's an independent elected board with its own statutory authority. They are elected and they have their own budget. They're a separate government entity. Their job is to, the Board of Health's job is to take actions to ensure public health. So one of the programs that they have had for a very long time, for multiple decades, I believe, is this needle exchange program, and it's targeted at reducing infectious disease, especially in the 90s when AIDS was a large epidemic. Needle exchange was the number one basically transmission vector for a lot of preventable disease. So the court found that the criminal statute did not apply to the Board of Health. They had independent authority that basically trumped that statute, and that it was lawful for them to do these programs. So I believe that's what was presented at the committee meeting, or the meeting that Council President Honda was referring to. I wasn't present. I was on vacation, so my assistant presented. But fundamentally, it's important that we all keep in mind that they have their own authority to do this. So we are negotiating. We are working with them. We're not telling them what to do.
And
That's correct.
Clearly,
Thank you.
Go ahead, Susan. Sorry.
Oh, no, that I just wanted to let Ryan know that was what was presented at the meeting, and that Eric did a great job.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eric is an assistant city attorney here, and so we wanted to make sure that the legal framework, but that doesn't mean that we're not without that we're without a voice, and that's what the committee is about. And this is really about community, what we expect as a community, and really making sure that there are guardrails and systems in place, and notifications, and all those kinds of things that we need to have, and some assurances that we need to have as a community. So, when I told some folks about this state Supreme Court decision, they're like, well, why would you have the committee then? And that's because clearly what was happening, we weren't really, there was really no buy-in with the community. And a lot of what Council President was talking about, and what Director Hayes was referring to, is we need to let the community know what is the purpose of this program, and then give the community an opportunity to say, well, hold on here. Let's make sure that this is still taxpayer dollars. Let's make sure that what's occurring in our community is supported by our community, and that we have a voice in it. So we look forward to those findings. And once again, thank you for your work on that. Okay, Council President Hunter, was that the conclusion of your report?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. That concludes the council reports. Now we're moving on to what I refer to as the most important part of the meeting, which is public comment. Everyone has 3 minutes, unless they are representing more than or 5 people or more. And we do have a timer, and I try not to interrupt folks, but let's try to stick to the 3 minutes, shall we? And be looking at the screen. With that, Stephanie, how many comments do we have?
I have 1 letter to read for general comment, and then I have 2 more letters for under the ordinance section.
Okay.
And no one signed up live to speak.
Okay. And Stephanie, I think last meeting I did go. I didn't quite know how long the letter was going to go, and I really try to err on the side, and we all try to do, let people say their piece. I think I let that letter go on a little long, so we'll just use our best judgment. We'll use a timer, and we'll see if someone's close to wrapping up. But we get
these are all very brief. These are all emails, very brief. It's not a 4-page letter, so they're very brief. Okay. We'll be under 3 minutes, I promise.
Okay.
All right. So the letter comes from Cheryl Hurst, and it says, "Dear City Council members and Mayor Farrell, with 2 South Sound cities, Auburn and Tacoma has a vote tonight banning camping and publicly sleeping / passing out in public. Does Federal Way have a Does Federal Way plan a similar or more less restrictive ban than these two cities, with free needles, a place no one will bother those who need help with housing and drug addiction? I'm wondering if Federal Way has any plans to address what is going to happen. Looking forward to a better tomorrow, Cheryl. And that's it. That's the only general comment I have. The other two comments are connected to the ordinance later in the agenda.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you very much. All right. Now let's move on to the consent agenda. These items have gone through committee and can all be passed at one motion. But I will ask after reading them whether a council member would want a separate item pulled for separate consideration. 5A, the minutes for the April 6th. I keep saying August, you guys. I got summer on the mind. It's this weather, all right? So item A, the minutes for the April 6th, 2021 regular and special meetings. Item B, 2021 storm drains closed circuit TV inspection and assessment bid award. It actually says CCTV. Item C has been pulled, and that was the WashDOT operations and maintenance agreement for adaptive control system. My understanding is that'll be pulled for a later meeting. So there is no C. Item D, Arts Commission 2021 contract for services. E, 2021 to 2022 Human Services Work Plan. Human Services Commission Work Plan. Item F, interlocal agreement with Public Health of Seattle King County for South King County Mobile Medical Program. It is Councilmember Kochmar talked about, that was the dental program. Thank you. Item G, the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, JAG, program for fiscal year 2020. H, agreement between the Washington Traffic Safety Commission, WTSC, and the Federal Way Police Department to provide grant funding for traffic enforcement. And item I, the Lake Haven Utility Water Main Easement, Lakota Park. And Councilmember Brusso, actually, do you have an official motion to pull a particular item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to formally ask to pull item C, the washout operations and maintenance agreement for adaptive traffic control system. Washouts want some additional revisions on that, and we will come back to a later council meeting, a later date.
All right, thank you, Council Member. That is officially pulled. Okay, Council President Honda, do you have a motion?
Yes. I move approval of items A and B and items D through I on the consent agenda.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, actually.
Council President Honda.
I would like to thank the Arts Commission for their work on the contract for services. As a past Arts Commissioner, I know that's a lot of work, and it's hard saying no to our very talented arts, different arts groups, that they can't get all the funding that they need to keep their programs going, but very necessary. And this year was especially hard because of the pandemic. And I'd like to thank the Human Services Commission for their work plan. They are both very hardworking commissions, and I certainly appreciate what they do, as well as all the rest of the council.
Very good. Thank you. Council, any other comments? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. All right. Number 6, ordinances. This is first, actually it would be first and second reading. Well, potentially second reading. First reading for Council Bill 801, ordinance relating to misdemeanor possession of controlled substances, adding a new section 6.1.130 to Chapter 6.10 Federal Way Revised Code. First, we'll hear from Ryan Call, our city attorney, for a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you see my screen?
We can, yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm here tonight to present, as the mayor said, an ordinance prohibiting misdemeanor drug possession. A little background about why we are proposing this ordinance. We've talked about this previously. There was a very significant Washington State Supreme Court decision recently called State v. Blake, which effectively invalidated the state law provisions that make it a felony to possess hard drugs, specific controlled substances like heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine. The court in the Blake decision was troubled that there was not what we in the criminal law call a mens rea requirement or an intent requirement. So they focused on kind of the innocent possessor scenario, where an innocent person who legitimately has no knowledge that they are in possession of drugs because they unintentionally came in possession of it. They borrowed a container or something containing drugs, or a car that had drugs in it, and hypothetically they could face severe felony consequences innocently. And so on that basis, the court struck down the statute. What this means is that currently statewide, there is no felony prohibition on possession of controlled substance. So in order to remedy that locally, the state, of course, has remedies. They could fix this statewide, and the state legislature has had ongoing negotiations to address that. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But in the interim, this proposed ordinance would create a misdemeanor level sanction for possessing those types of drugs. The ordinance before you tonight basically takes the exact language of the state statute and inserts the word knowingly. So it would make it unlawful for any person to knowingly possess a controlled substance other than marijuana, unless the substance was obtained directly from or in accordance with a valid prescription or order of a practitioner while acting in the course of their professional practice. That knowingly word should fix the problem that the Supreme Court identified. It would be a violation. This would be a gross misdemeanor, meaning that it would be punishable by a maximum of a year in jail or a $5,000 fine. Unlike the state law that was a felony level offense, which was enforced by the state and county level people, this would be on the city to enforce. So it would be investigated by the Federal Way Police Department, which is true now. It's always been the case that the Federal Way Police Department would investigate these crimes, but we would also be responsible for prosecuting them in municipal court. So city prosecutors would have to take over prosecution of these types of offenses. Just also by way of background, the reason we've never had a local misdemeanor charge for this is that the state law preempted any local action in this area. So meaning all drug offenses were addressed in the state statute at the felony level. Because the state Supreme Court invalidated the punishment for felony level drug possession, there is a very good argument that that gap leaves an opening for us to take action. That said, if the state legislature were to take action and create either a misdemeanor level sanction or a felony level sanction for possession of controlled substances, that would preempt once again, and this ordinance would would be preempted. It would no longer have any effect. Financial impacts of this should be internalized with existing budget. So the Federal Way Police Department already budgets for the investigation of possession of illegal substances. It's a task that they've been doing since they started. That is a function that they will continue to provide. Prosecution, we anticipate right now there's somewhere around 60 or so additional cases that could hypothetically come to the prosecutor's office, and we believe that we can internalize that with existing prosecutors. If demand for this type of prosecution increased, or if we had some other reason that increased the need for prosecutors, we might have to come back and ask for one additional prosecutor, but I don't anticipate that being an issue in the short term. Just some policy considerations of why it's important to have an ordinance like this. Without this ordinance currently, these very harmful drugs we can't do anything about them really. It's not legal necessarily to possess them. It's still a violation of federal law to illegally obtain and possess these drugs. However, there would be no practical consequence for being in possession of them. Just the use of these drugs is often the driving force behind theft, some violent crime. We see impaired driving as a consequence of using these drugs, and there's other ancillary effects to society, and that's why these drugs have been outlawed in the past. So I believe that continues to be good policy, and think it's important for a city the size of Federal Way to have a law against possessing these types of drugs. The mayor strongly recommends the city council approve this ordinance. Do you have any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ryan. I do believe that we need something like this to hold people accountable. But I do have a question under the financial impact. So let's say if we are going to, put somebody in jail for, up to a year or 6 months. Have we figured out the financial impact on that?
So just as an explanation of how it works when someone is sentenced, first off, no one is probably ever going to get a year for this. I've never seen someone get a year of jail for mere possession of drugs. That's the maximum that's available. It would be an extraordinary case or something like that. Usually the people that are getting a year in misdemeanor court are people who have committed repeat DUIs or repeat DV offenses, pretty serious, dangerous crimes. I don't anticipate that being the case with this. Most of the cases here would be, especially if they're nonviolent, it's people that have no violent history. A lot of them will be handled with some sort of diversion program or jail served, like they might have been in jail for a day or two waiting to see the judge. I don't anticipate large sentences. So obviously if we started seeing, and also I would like to say, I don't control sentences. We can ask for things. The prosecutors can ask a judge to impose a certain type of sentence. The judges have their own opinions on what types of sentences are appropriate in these cases, and I've not seen more than a few days of jail for these type of offenses.
I see. Thank you.
Councilmember Kraft, I saw your hand up.
Attorney Call actually answered my question. I was going to ask him what he anticipated, how the court would be ruling in cases like this. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Council President Honda.
Thank you. So is this as having a hard time talking tonight? I'm a little bit tired. Is this as tough as we can make it, or could it be made tougher?
It is, unless the only way it could be tougher, Council President Honda, and that's a good question, because remember when years ago, actually when I was early on as a city council member, I instituted mandatory minimums for domestic violence occurring in the presence of children or domestic violence by strangulation. And in both of those offenses, I had a mandatory minimum provision of 30 days. So the only way it could be tougher, the jurisdictional limit, let me just go back a step. The jurisdictional limit for a court of limited jurisdiction, and that's like a municipal city court, like what we have, or a district court, the maximum is a gross misdemeanor, which is this, a year in jail and a $5,000 fine. The only way it could be tougher was if you had mandatory minimums. Now, DUIs, actually, we were talking about that before, and Ryan is absolutely spot on that in the hundreds of DUI cases that I have handled in my career, my prior career, that very, very rarely does somebody get a year, but every once in a while you see somebody with 5 or 6 DUIs, or there's an accident or something like that, and it's like, we better put this person in jail. I had actually somebody with 2 pending DUIs, and we ran them consecutively to each other for 2 years. I still remember that person's name. So those are available as options for a municipal court judge if you really feel like someone is a threat to society. I did the same thing with a domestic violence offense, where you can run them consecutively to each other, end over end, and get a longer sentence. So with regard to being tougher, you could go. What I was going to say in DUIs. If you've got, that used to be, and Landry, you can correct me on this. Okay, so if you had no BAC, or the BAC was over a 1.5, you'd have a mandatory minimum 2 days in jail. If it was less than a 1.5, then I think it's 1.5, or it was.
It's 1.5, yeah.
mandatory 1 day in jail that they had to serve. So if the council wanted to, at some point, they could impose some sort of mandatory minimum or some sort of scale with driving while license suspended offenses. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. You kind of push the button here, Susan. But sorry, it's like but like for driving while license suspended in the first degree, first offense is 10 days, second offense is 90 days, third offense is 180 days. So council could, if you wanted to explore that kind of escalation clause or mandatory minimums, that's a possibility.
Okay. So Ryan talked about diversion programs. Is it possible to have Judge Larson come to a council meeting and speak about what he's doing in the court? He's doing some really good stuff down there to help people. And it would be nice if our citizens knew what our court was doing, because they are doing some really good work there.
We've got actually him on the calendar here soon for a State of the Judiciary address before this council. And I think you're spot on. And we've been talking about that. I've been meeting with we're very fortunate to have two great judges, and Judge Larson is doing a phenomenal job. And I think that'd be great. And we could actually have him come back for anything on this. Stephanie?
I was just going to say that's actually slated right now for the next meeting. So on May 4th, that's when we have State of the Courts. So very timely.
That's I thought I didn't remember exactly when.
Yeah, I know he had talked about doing it. I didn't know it was coming up so soon. And so I'm assuming that this is going to pass. I don't know why it wouldn't pass. So let's say it passes first and second vote, tonight. If an officer, one of our police officers, sees someone using drugs in public, then what? Would the officer be able to go to that person, stop them, try to get them into some kind of a program, or what would happen?
Yeah, an officer would be able to investigate the crime of possession of drugs. Most misdemeanors, you have to either see it happening or kind of stumble into it through some other search. So oftentimes when we find drugs, it's because they're doing something else that requires a search of a car or a person, and that's how it comes up. But yeah, if someone's openly using heroin in a parking lot, they could investigate that, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kraft.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the Chief of Police, Chief Huang, for running some numbers that I asked prior to in preparation of this meeting. If I'm understanding the statistics correctly, Chief, the way that bucks of possession cases have been affecting the residents of Federal Way has been pretty proportional to the demographics of the city residents. Is that right?
That is correct. I didn't know the actual racial breakdown of charges for drug possession or delivery or any of that. And just when the number came out, about 50% of all drug possession, drug charges were Caucasian. And then the other 50% were people of color. And the numbers seem proportionate or to the demographics of Federal Way when I looked at it. So so that's what's happening with drug charges, is that it seems proportionate to our population base in Federal Way.
Thank you.
And if I could add just one thing, this policy decision is important from a police perspective, and as a city, I would tell you that when the word gets out that it is illegal to possess controlled substance in Federal Way, that will just reduce, I don't know what percentage, but it will have a positive impact in reducing the drug activity in our community. And I would tell you, whether it's buying, selling, all that stuff, it'll just reduce it, because, I would tell you that 80-90% of crime have some nexus to drugs. Quite often we see drug houses where we have, shootings and things like that, drug deals gone bad. If we're one of few cities that do that. There are going to be individuals who's going to pay attention to that, knowing that possession of drugs you could be arrested for in federal way. So I think it's a good policy decision to keep our community safe.
Okay, Council President Honda.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. The drug houses that you talk about, those would have been, even without this, you still go in and take care of them after sufficient study of what's going on there, right? I mean, this would not make you do anything different.
No, our special investigation unit is still going after drug houses and marijuana homes. They've been doing that. They've been doing control buys and then serving search warrants. So that hasn't changed. I just think that there's just having this ordinance will just support the fact that, hey, you can't have drugs in federal way. And I do want to share with you the race breakdown. That I have it here. So of the arrests made, 90 so arrests, 11 were Asians. And I shared with Councilmember Kraft that some of those I believe are marijuana homes. And then Black or African American, 19%, American Indian or Alaska, Native American, 4%, Hispanic, 10 of those arrests, and then Pacific Islander, 1, unknown race, 2, white, 49 of the 90 so arrests. Those are the numbers.
Okay. Council, any other questions or comments? Okay. And I want to make it clear, we're not, I don't believe it would be appropriate to have mandatory minimums on this. It's just that I was asking whether it could be, or I was answering the question whether it could be harder.
Do we have public comment?
We do.
Okay.
We do. I think we've got a couple. I think there are 2 letters. Is that right, Stephanie?
Yes, I have 2 letters to read, or 2 emails.
Very good. Okay, Stephanie, please.
Are you ready for those?
Yes.
All right. First one is from Grace Lebrano, and it says, the council needs to support the mayor with changing the wording to knowingly regarding drug possession. It will give the police the authority to go after those possessing drugs or selling. We need to give the police these tools to have an effect on drugs being used and sold in our community. The impact of drugs in our community is felt by everyone. Please don't speak up because they feel it's fruitless. I have heard from so many people that they're glad I'm speaking for them. No man is an island. We're all in this together and depend on the mayor and city council to advocate for us. Thank you, Grace Lebrano, Federal Way resident. And I have a second letter. This one says, this is from Anna Patrick, and it reads, good evening, Mayor, Council President, and Council members. I'm asking the City Council to support the amendment of the City of Federal Way Revised Code pertaining to drug possession. The City of Federal Way is experiencing a severe impact from drugs such as heroin and methamphetamines. Our city needs tools to address this issue. Many claim that legalizing drugs will drive people into treatment, which is simply not true. Many choose to continue on their current path, which is harming themselves and our community. Please carefully examine the statistics that are being presented at the legislative level regarding success rates of particular strategies to justify legalization of all drugs. It's clear that these statistics are being skewed. When you legalize drugs and then you only look at those who ask for treatment, of course, the success rate is going to be higher. Some people need a different approach and a nudge into treatment. After observing the process to recovery by friends and family and others in our community, I learned that you have to take away the resources such as drugs and the ability to commit the crimes necessary to maintain the drug habit. We've got to do everything possible as a community to help people live a better life. Many have children who depend on it. Also, many parents are desperate to have the city and county and state step up and support them in getting their child on a better path. I know some people who even want their children to spend time in jail, which keeps them off the streets and clean, so that maybe eventually they'll decide to get treatment and change their life for the better. Thank you for your consideration of my concerns. Many in the community depend on this. Anna Patrick. And those are the only 2 comments I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, now we're on the for council discussion and questions. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. You know, I am curious about Grace's comments, and I'm thankful that we do have public comments after such decisions here. The word knowingly, I mean, what's the opinion of the of the attorney in adding that into this language into the ordinance?
Well, that was what the Supreme Court had issue with. The state statute did not have an intent element. So hypothetically, you could unintentionally be in possession of drugs and still be convicted of a felony. And they found that to be unconstitutional. So this fixes that.
Okay. So that was the original issue that the state Supreme Court had?
Yes. Basically, the state Supreme Court said, because the consequences of being convicted of a felony are so severe, or could be so severe, it should be impossible to do it unintentionally. The state should have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you knew you were doing it.
Okay, so just to, if you were to add the word knowing, just say, then what could the challenges be with that? If we were just to go ahead and add that in, what would happen?
Well, knowing intent is an element of every crime, basically. There's very few crimes that are called strict liability offenses. This was one of the very few. So it's a very routine thing for us to have to prove intent in a criminal prosecution. It's 99% of the charges we have to prove have that element. So there is no legal challenge to having the word knowingly in there. It prevents legal challenge.
And this is, frankly, all the legislature has to do to fix the statute is to add this word. But the legislature right now is utilizing this opportunity now, and based on this decision and now this gap in law, they are debating right now. There was actually a proposal before the legislature to add the word knowingly and to fix this issue. Right now, it is not right now in the state of Washington. It is not illegal to possess cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine. It's not illegal because the statute has been struck down. This measure is designed. That's why we're going to be asking for an amendment of the rule to make sure we advocate this. The proposal before the legislature to insert the word knowingly, that bill's going nowhere. There was senators, I think I mentioned at the last council meeting, Senator Moncadingra from the 45th Legislative District in North King County. She came up with a proposal to legalize personal amounts of these controlled substances, but keep it a felony for things after a certain threshold. In the state Senate, that proposal was rejected. And instead, the Senate approved, just the Senate so far, approved a statewide law to make possession of controlled substances a gross misdemeanor like we would do here. But that has yet to be passed by the House. So that's what's going on. But this could have been fixed in the legislature with adding the one word.
So if it could have been fixed in the legislature with adding that one word, I mean, we could add it ourselves.
We just did. Well,
Okay.
That's what this is. This proposal is to add this word and put it into our city code.
Perfect. Okay, I want that to be clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, this would cure the constitutional infirmity pointed out by State versus Blake. And Lander, I've been waiting all night to say constitutional infirmity. So Ryan will appreciate that as well. All right, Council, any other questions? Okay, let's see here.
So, Mayor, thank you. I have a motion. First, I'd like to say thank you to Grace Lebrano and Anna Patrick for their very well researched and thought out emails. Yes, and adding the word knowingly to our ordinance is very important. We have to have some accountability in our judicial system, and our children in particular need to understand that there are consequences. Although we don't want to punish those who don't know what's going. For example, this Supreme Court decision was based on a young woman, I believe, who borrowed a friend's jeans that they had just bought at Goodwill, and it had some amount of drugs in the pocket that she was not aware of. I think that's why this whole thing came to be in the Supreme Court. So, Mayor, I move to suspend Council Rule 2.2H to allow first reading and enactment of the ordinance in one meeting. Is there a second?
Second. I just did a second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? The motion is to suspend Council Rule 2.2 H to allow first reading and enactment of the ordinance in one meeting. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. It passes unanimously. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title?
An ordinance of the City of Federal Way, Washington relating to misdemeanor possession of controlled substances, adding new section 6.10.130 to Chapter 6.10 Federal Way Revised Code.
All right. Councilmember Kochmar, do you have a motion with respect to the final motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I move approval and adoption of the proposed ordinance.
Second.
Been a motion and multiple seconds. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Matter passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, Council. We are off to Council reports, and let us start with Councilmember Kochmar.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have much this evening. I'm looking forward to the grand opening of our farmers market. There are still, even though we're all in lockdown still for the most part, there are still groups that are working on behalf of our community. For example, the Optimists this Saturday are having their salmon bake, their normal luncheon, but it's actually a drive-through to pick up a salmon lunch, which good for the Optimists. They do wonderful work with scholarships. Multi-Service Center is going to have their annual crab feed and auction. It's going to be virtual. Again, the date is June 5th. If you've never had their crab, it's fabulous. In order to register and get a ticket, the tickets are $75. You just go online at MSC, Multi-Service Center, MSC Helps, HELPS.org, and that's how you can purchase your tickets. And finally, not to forget the Kiwanians, of whom we have several on the council. Remember that we will be having our annual salmon bake. I believe it's going to be virtual again in the end of July. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually going to do something that you're not used to hearing me say. I have no report.
All right. Thank you very much.
Look at that. I'm getting a lot of reaction there, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
All right.
Okay. Councilmember Kraft.
I am going to kind of decorum for myself because that was really funny to me. On a serious note, though, today was a really important day in our justice system. I'm not sure who out there was watching the Chauvin trial. I was watching the entire trial. And as a woman of color who is a prosecutor and working in this work every day, it was fascinating to watch the trial from that angle of strategies. But the overall issue was whether or not the justice system can work for BIPOC community members. So I will say that the fact that myself and others were watching the verdict, bracing ourselves whether or not he was going to get found guilty is a shame. And I will say that when I saw the verdict was read and Chauvin was found guilty on all three charges, I was relieved. But I will say that it's not just because if that was justice, George Floyd would still be around. And I think that this was an important verdict for us to see as America and for the world to see where we are in America. But there's still lots of work to do, and I will end my report there. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Council Member Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, Member Moore, I was just joking. I always enjoy your report. So,
I was just teasing. I loved it. It's all good.
right, thank you. Last week, no, 2 weeks ago, I said that I'm gonna report out a lot of things today, but then for some reason I a little bit distracted because my son is in the hospital right now. But I do have two things I want to share quickly. One, I hope Ade is still on the line. I want to congratulate on his retirement. I really enjoy working with him. I respect him, and you know, it's no longer fun without him being around. But I'm happy for you, Ade, if you listen in, and I'm really looking forward to the day that we, may be able to hang out together. Um, the second thing I want to share is that for the last month or so, every Wednesday, a group of us, Councilmember Kraft, Councilmember Moore, Council President Honda, and I may have missed a few of you, and members of the community, we get together around 5:30 on Wednesdays at the corner of Pacific Highway and 320th, just waving sign. And this is the group that we call "We Are Not Silent" event. So it's a non-political, bipartisan. We just want to, side waving and connect with the public to raise awareness that the crimes against AAPI community is on the rise, and I'm very happy to see that the reaction from the driver that went by was very, very positive. So I just want to share that with all of you and with the community. And like I said, we are there every Wednesday at 5:30 for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and then we'll go home. But this is really good event. So everybody are invited. And with that, I'm end my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Baruso.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the happy side, so Ade, welcome to. Thank you for all your service. I know we're going to miss you. I know that since I've been working with you, you always answer my questions. You're always patient when I have something to ask, and you have the pretty candid on your answers. But I appreciate your work and what you've done. Enjoy retirement. I think that one day a lot of us sitting here will probably be in there, same boat. Everyone always asks me the same thing, but Ade, congratulations, and we won't miss you. I know we will. I just want to echo what Councilmember Kraft has said. Even though that Chauvin was found guilty, we still have a lot of work to do. Just think about it's not done. We have to make sure this never happens again. We all have to work at this to do that. I know that folks that we had a sigh of relief and took a breath, but just remember that Mr. George Floyd didn't have that chance at the time. So we do that for him. Again, let's make sure that his legacy is not something to forgotten about, and we need to work on things ourselves. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I end my report.
All right. Thank you very much. Councilmember Sefadasa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I also would like to start by congratulating Ade and thank you, Ade, for always answering questions and being prompt and for educating me and all the things. And I know sometimes I ask questions that I think are not done, but you always have made me feel like, no, those questions are good questions. So thank you for that. And Hong, I'm sorry about your son, and I hope he gets better soon. With that, Councilman Member Kraft and Baruso said, today's verdict was really emotional, and justice for George Floyd is justice for all, in particular Black men. Unfortunately, it doesn't make up for all the losses that have happened before George Floyd and since then. I mean, there have been a lot of death. And so those are true, genuine experiences that Black people feel. And so the communities, and so like Councilmember Barusa said, it's not time to ease up, it's not time to relax, but it's definitely a forward movement. And I'm thankful for that verdict. Personally, I was attending the 2021 Regional Approach to Gun Violence meeting. And when the verdict came in, there was a moment of silence where the meeting really stopped. And we had a moment of silence, and the meeting ended because they felt like it was time for people to reflect, for people to self-care, and really examine their emotion and how they're feeling. So in that moment, that meeting was not important anymore. What was important was people taking care of themselves. And I so greatly appreciated that moment and how it was handled. And after that, people I was talking to, just phone calls from friends, was checking in. And I think that is so refreshing. And I hope we all check in with people around their feelings, with what's going on in our community, in our society, in our nation. Let's just check in. Let's just make that something we prioritize, because I felt relieved when someone asked me how I was doing. And in return, when I asked that of someone else, it almost caught us off guard. But I'm just challenging all of us to be intentional about our actions when we talk to people or when we check in. So thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for your time, for this time.
Thank you. Council President Honda.
Thank you. Thank you for your words, Councilmember Sefadossan. I too want to thank Aday for his service to the city. I remember the council meeting that he was introduced, and we were voting on some funding for the PAC that night. And I remember chasing after him as he was leaving because I wanted his opinion on it. And because he had to drive back to Ellensburg, I think it was. So he gave me his opinion, and I have enjoyed working with him ever since. I'm not surprised that this day is coming. I knew that this day would come, and I'm sad that he's leaving, and he certainly deserves, after 35 years of working for the government, working for the people, and he deserves a break. So he'll have big shoes to fill, and I'm hoping by his last day here in July that we can have an in-person retirement send-off. I'm certainly hoping that's possible, even if we have to do it in a parking lot. So anyway,
Yes.
Thank you, Dave. I'll miss you.
There'll be cake. We'll slice it before we get out the parking lot.
I hope Aday is writing down. I've asked him to write a book about all of his sayings, because he always has something to say when he's talking about something. And I hope he has written those down, because I haven't written them down, and I wish I would have, but maybe he did. So thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, Council, that concludes our meeting. At this time, we are adjourned. Thank you, Council. It's an honor and a privilege to serve with each and every one of you. And thank you, staff, for your great work. With that, like I said, we are adjourned. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.